All right, everybody, let's get started. It's that time. It is 12 o'clock. It's noon here in the SCCU Daily Planet Theater. Thanks for joining us for today's program, everyone. Welcome to the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. Welcome to the Daily Planet Theater for the Lunchtime Discovery Series. Yay! You've made it to our weekly lecture program that's coordinated and organized by the folks at the Office of Environmental Education. Pretty much every Wednesday, all year long, almost all year long, they're bringing in special guests to the museum and online where we have the opportunity to hear about the work that they're doing, interesting things that they're learning. They can teach us, we can hear fun stories. And through it all, if you're an environmental educator out there in the world participating in this, you can become a better environmental educator, a better educated environmental educator. And if you're just joining us here in the museum, we get to meet interesting people who do interesting stuff out there in the worlds of science, nature, education, art, and more. My name, of course, I'm Chris Smith. I work here at the Museum of Natural Sciences. I'm your host for the Lunchtime Discovery Series and our programming here at the Daily Planet Theater. But that just means that I get the pleasure and privilege of welcoming you all to our space, as well as introducing our guest speakers for the program. Today, we've got a fun one for you. I'm very excited. We've got an expert environmental educator in the museum today, Laura White, who previously served as the Nature Center supervisor for Stevens Nature Center at Hemlock Bluffs. Maybe you've been there. Maybe you've visited Hemlock Bluffs. Maybe you've been to Stevens Nature Center. And now is doing really exciting work as a seasonal park ranger for the National Park Service. So I'm excited to hear about these adventures and see some more of these amazing photos. Everybody put your hands together and welcome to the stage, Laura White.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Chris. Thank you to the museum, and thank you to my friends at the Office of Environmental Education for inviting me here today. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk about living my dream and having adventures along the way. So to get started, I have to do a shout out to my sister. And this is myself and my sister at Grand Teton National Park. It's always been my childhood dream to be a park ranger, and I wouldn't have followed my dream had it not been for my sister who supported me along the way. But as Chris said, I started my career, and probably most of you know me, from my long career at Hemlock Bluffs Nature Preserve, 22 years, serving in a very satisfying and fulfilling career at Hemlock Bluffs as the supervisor. And it was satisfying and fulfilling because of the people I met along the way, the network of environmental educators and park managers that I met along the way, and the staff that I had the opportunity to work with. Working in the Raleigh area, you have 3 major universities, 4 or 5 other universities to pull from where students are wanting to get their feet wet and they want to work part-time while they're in college or right after they graduate. So you have an awesome pool of students to pull from that will work for nothing and come on board and show you their skills and allow you to use their skills to make a world-class environmental education center. And Hemlock Bluffs is a world-class environmental education center here in the Raleigh-Cary area, and I'm really proud to have that as part of my legacy. And before I left, I was really proud to work on a couple of major projects at Hemlock Bluffs. The exhibits were really stale when they were installed, and so we were able to get some grants from some local partners, and we were able to kind of change the status quo of exhibitry in the Stevens Nature Center. So we went from a lot of text and a lot of reading and a lot of boring exhibits, and we went to high-tech, family-friendly, hands-on, lots of videos where people could come in and really be engaged with their kids and their families. I'm really proud of that exhibit project. Working with the staff at Hemlock Bluffs, a lot of staff were involved with the project, and we had really good partners in this area. Our partners were grantors that were really involved with wanting children to get involved with environmental education, and we had awesome exhibit contractors as well. So stepping up the exhibits in the Stevens Nature Center was a really big priority for me, and that project came to fruition before I left and a little bit after I retired. I continued to work with the Friends Board, so that was important for me. And then the Children's Nature Trail, and if you've been to Hemlock Bluffs, you've probably seen the Children's Nature Trail. Hemlock Bluffs is a wonderful facility. It's a partnership between the state of North Carolina and the town of Cary. And there's about 3 miles of trails. They're fairly rigorous trails. And so during my career, I saw a lot of crying children and a lot of parents carrying children off the trails because the trails are strenuous and kids get tired and cranky on trails that they have to climb 180 steps up, straight up. And so we wanted to do something for the kids. So the Friends of Hemlock Bluffs and the staff and REI mostly put together a plan with a really wonderful designer and created the Children's Nature Trail with trail activities in a small area that kids could enjoy nature and the outdoors with their families and not have to be in a rigorous battle with their parents to be in the outdoors. We wanted kids to love Hemlock Bluffs, not to hate Hemlock Bluffs or hate the outdoors. So really proud of those two projects that I kind of left behind when I left the Stevens Nature Center management. But I'm still involved with the Friends of Hemlock Bluffs when I'm not doing other things in my life. So Hemlock Bluffs is truly one of the most wonderful things I did in my life, but I did move on. I've always been a child of the outdoors, and so I had a very outdoorsy lifestyle. I came home from school and played in the woods in the backyard, and I didn't know to come home until my mom rang the big gong, and then all the kids in the neighborhood knew to come home. And we played until it got dark, and we made forts and got stung by yellow jackets, and that was all a part of life. And my parents were hikers and campers and paddlers, and we did all sorts of outdoorsy things. And when I look back at it, I remember I was going through my mom's books to see if I could find some photos, and all of the photos had us doing these daredevil things. There was pictures of my kid brothers and sisters with me in the canoe. I couldn't find a life jacket, a picture of a life jacket. We were in these canoes with no life jackets, no flotation devices. There were pictures of our feet at Half Dome with tennis shoes on. I don't think I owned hiking boots until college, so we were doing all of these things. If you notice on the left-hand picture, we're at the top of a waterfall. You know, I have had jobs where we had to tell people, get down off the waterfall, it's not safe. So we were outdoor adventurers, and that's what my family's lifestyle was. We hiked, we camped, we canoed, and we did it all. And my parents took us on an out west adventure one summer. And because when you're from the east, you call it out west, of course. When you're out west, you don't know what out west is. But and if you notice the picture on the left, we had one of those RVs of the olden days. It was a Volkswagen camper, and the tent stuck onto the side where the sliding door was, and my sister and I slept in the tent. There was a gap between the bottom of the camper door and the ground that Volkswagen hadn't thought of how do you manage that gap, so it was just open. So we'd be sleeping on our sleeping bags, and any manner of wildlife could just walk under the camper and into the tent with us. So we hardly slept at night because we had to make these elaborate plans for what if a raccoon walked under there and came into the tent? Or what if a skunk came in there under the tent? So we hardly got any sleep on our camping vacations because we were so afraid. But then my parents did upgrade to the pop-up camper. And then for the rest of my parents' together life, they had an RV. And so my husband and I would join together with my parents, and we had some awesome vacations in their RV. If you're willing to sleep where the kitchen table collapses, then you can go on some great vacations with your parents in their RV. And so we got to go to Denali and Yosemite and some of the other national parks, just hitchhiking along with my parents in their RV. So don't knock it till you've done it, because you get to go to some great places. So I did go to college because I was outdoorsy. I went to college for Parks and Recreation. I met my college sweetheart, and he was also in Parks and Recreation. And right after college, we got married, and we both got jobs in Parks and Recreation. But when you meet your college sweetheart in college and you both are in Parks and Recreation, you kind of decide to stay close. So he got a job with the City of Raleigh Parks and Recreation Department, and then I ultimately ended up with Cary Parks and Recreation, and we both worked out our careers here in the Triangle area. And he worked with senior citizens. So I worked with Hemlock Bluffs Nature Preserve, which really is the best of both worlds. Like, if I'm gonna work in a park, I can go to Whole Foods on the way home or go see a movie. That's pretty good. But we started a love affair with the national parks while we were married. So that kind of quelled my itch for big parks and big Western parks. So we started visiting national parks while we were married, and what a great way to spend your vacation. So we really, really enjoyed visiting parks, small parks, big parks, all sorts of national parks, and spending our time that way as opposed to tropical islands and that sort of thing. Once we retired, I couldn't turn it off. I couldn't turn off the work bug. So I started working with the Friends of Hemlock Bluffs and working with horticultural therapy, working at our local food cupboard garden, growing food for folks who are hungry. And then I went to a colleague and said, can I volunteer with you at your environmental education center? It's just down the road from where I live. So I worked for the Agape Center for Environmental Education, teaching kids about nature. So I stayed busy doing things, teaching kids about nature. But while we were visiting those national parks, I decided, I really like to go on ranger programs. Every national park I went to, I went on a program because I love rangers. I'm like a ranger groupie. I like to see the rangers doing the stuff, and I like to learn the stuff. So I go and watch their programs, and then I thought, I could do that. I could do that. Well, actually, I went to Grand Teton with my husband, and we asked the girl at the visitor center, how can you do that? And she said, oh, you should volunteer. All the older people volunteer. That made me kind of mad. I still have some good years in me. So I thought, I'll volunteer if they won't have me work for them, but I'm going to try to get the job first. And so I applied to be a park ranger, and thankfully I did get the job. We're experiencing technical difficulty. So older folks do volunteer, yeah, but I wasn't ready to volunteer at that time. So I started my career at Great Smoky Mountains National Park. It's close, it's in state, and I had visited Great Smoky Mountains many, many times as part of my experience in just being a naturalist in North Carolina. And I had visited there in my parents' RV. So I had been in the campgrounds, I had been on the trails, I had visited Great Smoky Mountain National Park. So I figured I'll apply Great Smokies. I know something about Great Smokies. I've been in their campgrounds, I've hiked their trails, I know about the natural history. I'll go ahead and apply for a job at Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Great Smoky Mountains National Park, if you're not familiar, is located in North Carolina and Tennessee. It spans the border. It's in the southern Appalachians. It's 500,000 square miles. It's the biggest national park in the eastern part of the United States, and it's known for its great biodiversity. So the mountains make up the climate in the park, and because they have high elevation and low elevation, and because the weather patterns come across from the west, the rain kind of stops and drops at the mountains, and so it makes for wonderful rainfall. It's a temperate rainforest, so it makes for animal, plant, and beautiful watersheds. And so it ranges from high elevation mountain islands to beautiful floral displays, very high plant diversity, and they're still discovering new life in the Great Smoky Mountains. So awesome place. They released elk back into the Great Smokies successfully. So you will see big fauna there when you go. And it's just very lush and green. Also, there's a huge cultural history there with Native Americans that dates way back. They actually own some of the land there, and cultural history with original settlers, white settlers, European American settlers there as well. So a lot to learn when you go to the Great Smokies. I applied and got a job in a campground, a fee ranger, they call it. So I worked in a campground building. It was about 16 by 20, and it was at the Smokemont campground. And I thought I would be using my, only to me, my vast knowledge of the Great Smoky Mountains when I worked in the campground, telling people where to find the elk and all about the vast salamander population and all the things I had learned when I visited Great Smoky Mountains with my naturalist friends. What I really did was check people into the campground and take their money and make reservations for the campground and stand behind the counter in the campground. So when you're a fee ranger, you're very busy with fees. It's a great way to get your foot in the door with the National Park Service, but you're not an interpretive ranger, you're a fee ranger. When you go through your 3 days of training, they make a big deal about you being a ranger, but you're a fee ranger. And it's a great opportunity for young people to learn about the park and to learn about the fee structure and to get your feet wet, because you learn a lot about behind the scenes at Great Smoky Mountains National Park. I did take the opportunity to be in Great Smokies, to visit Great Smokies, walk trails I'd never walked before, to learn about the campground structure, to recreate on my own time, and to get to know where I would want to work if I wanted to work in the Smokies. And so I did things on my own time to enjoy what was available in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, but there wasn't a lot of what I thought I would be doing when I went to Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And the big question, you know that every park has the question, where's the restroom? Where's the waterfall, is the question at Great Smoky Mountains National Park. I did get to swear in junior rangers, and that's the best part of the job, and still love it to this day. We worked with several fee rangers in the booth and many volunteers. Great Smoky Mountains has an awesome volunteer program. They use campground hosts in their host sites, and these people are eternally wonderful. And they are in the campgrounds at night. They check people in, and they work for nothing. Also, volunteers drive 441, the road through Newfound Gap and over, in essentially police cars, and they are retired law enforcement, and they help people that are disabled or need assistance or are hurt, and they are very, very helpful. Several couples do it throughout the summer, and nobody knows about it, but they're great help. So lots of volunteers make Great Smoky Mountain National Park run smoothly. So a big shout out to the volunteers at Great Smoky Mountain National Park. So I didn't like being a fee ranger, and I knew I wanted to be an interpretive ranger, but I learned a lot of stuff at Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and I applied to work at Blue Ridge Parkway the next season. Blue Ridge Parkway is the longest road planned as a park in the National Park Service system. It's 469 miles long. It runs from Shenandoah National Park to Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and it was meant to run to connect those two parks. So it is the scenic drive of America. It's America's favorite drive, and it's the museum of the American countryside. So it is mostly pastoral views in Virginia, not a lot of high mountains, but when you get into North Carolina, a lot of high mountains and sweeping views in North Carolina. So I worked in North Carolina out of the Asheville area, and we had about 109 area of Park Service unit from Mount Mitchell area, Craggy Gardens, down to the Water Rock Knob area near Maggie Valley. And of course, that area of the parkway is known for the beautiful mountains, sweeping views, overlooks, and the visitor centers that you can visit along the way. I worked for the federal government, the National Park Service, with the visiting public in the North Carolina mountains during the COVID pandemic. And that was quite an opportunity. For the first year, we were outside the visitor centers, and we set up education stations on the Blue Ridge Parkway in the overlooks. For the second year, we were inside and pretty much social distancing and had the plexiglass up on our little booth. And we were asking folks to wear masks inside the buildings. So the visitor center is the Blue Ridge Parkway Visitor Center, and even outside, people were wearing masks the first year. We didn't know. We didn't know what to do, so we were using every precaution possible. Even on the overlooks, in the outdoor, in the fresh air, we set up social distancing, but we did set up educational stations outside the visitor centers with flagging tape around us. But we would talk to anybody who stopped at an overlook and provide information. That was the main way we were providing information: maps, materials, suggestions. We also were set up at the visitor center, the small visitor centers. They're really tiny. If you've been to Craggy Gardens or Water Rock Knob, they're really small. So we were outside the visitor centers at a table providing information. And then some of the overlooks, like way up at Craggy Gardens, we would set up tables with information as well. So anywhere a ranger could be to provide information, where people would be, that's where we would set up tables. A little bit different look at the National Park Service. Now, a lot of people don't think about the Blue Ridge Parkway for abundance of natural life because they're driving by at 45 miles an hour. But if you step away from your car, there's a lot of beautiful abundance, especially flora. So once you stop and you park, you can step away from your car and see beautiful wildflower displays, even rivaling Great Smoky Mountains National Park. So that's a ranger secret. Up at Mount Pisgah, if you stop and pull over to any of the overlooks and walk the little quiet trails, there's beautiful wildflowers up there. Most people will usually see the wildlife from the car. They'll see a deer from their window, or they'll see a bear. If you drive down to Water Rock and Maggie Valley now, the elk from Great Smoky Mountains are moving on to the Blue Ridge Parkway, so you can even see an elk on the Blue Ridge Parkway now. The elk have a great success story, and they're moving all around into Maggie and into the Blue Ridge Parkway area as well. So the Blue Ridge Parkway has a lot of hidden secrets. And it's known for those sweeping views, the stonemason stonework, and those beautiful overlooks. And the question asked at the Blue Ridge Parkway, when do the rhododendrons bloom? Usually around Father's Day, and it's a beautiful, prolific bloom. The next question, when is peak fall color? They call us on the phone and they ask, when is peak fall color? You can see fall color about any time that there's fall color begins in fall. So that's October, a little bit of late September and October. And because the Blue Ridge Parkway has elevational changes, you can just drive the parkway and find peak fall color. So all you have to do is change a little bit in elevation and have a little bit of driving time, and you can see peak fall color. And there are some waterfalls too. You don't have to just go to the Great Smokies for the waterfall. You can go to the waterfalls along the Blue Ridge Parkway. So I learned a lot working at two of the most visited parks in the National Park Service system. And their visitation is in like the 20,000s. 22 million visitors a year. So that's a lot of visitors per year. So you learn a lot. You learn a lot about interacting with visitors and what they want to know. But my dream was to work at Grand Teton National Park. And the reason that I dreamed at working at Grand Teton National Park dates back to that out west vacation that my parents took my family on. It made an impact if you take your kids on vacation. And I can remember standing with my dad at an overlook looking at the Teton Range, and my siblings were in the station wagon fighting amongst themselves, and my dad and I were just standing in the overlook. Well, you don't call it an overlook at Grand Teton, you call it a pullout. You get the lingo right. So we're in the pullout and we're looking at the range, and it's staggering. There's nothing between you and the Teton Range. There's not any mountains in between. It's just Jackson Hole Valley and the Tetons, and it's amazing. And I was 10, and I remember feeling overwhelmed, and it was so beautiful. And I look up at my dad, and my dad was one of these, get in the car, kids, we're behind schedule. And my dad had the same look on his face that I was feeling, and he was pretty stoic, but at that moment, he was amazed too. And I felt like we were having a feeling together. And I thought, oh, this is so amazing. And I wasn't fighting with my siblings in the car. I was having a feeling with my dad here. So I felt pretty overwhelmed and stunned at the Tetons, and I felt connected. I felt connected to my dad, and I felt connected to the Tetons. So I thought, oh, if I could just stay here. And we stayed in a campground, and we went to a ranger program. And to this day, I can still remember the stories the ranger told and the songs that he sang. I remember the words to the songs that the ranger sang at that ranger program. So made a pretty big impression on me. And I thought, I want to do that. And today, when I work as a Grand Teton seasonal ranger, I thank people who bring their kids on a vacation to Grand Teton, and I tell them that it really can impact their kids. And I tell the kids, when I was your age, I got to come here. So maybe I can impress upon them what it meant to me, and that they can follow their dreams too. Well, I applied for Grand Teton, and I got the job. I got to be a seasonal ranger at Grand Teton National Park. And they got a twofer. They got a 2-for-1. I got to work as Grand Teton National Park Ranger, and they got my husband free. My husband got to go as a volunteer. He works at a lake and teaches people about being safe from the bears, and he keeps the bears safe from the people. It's a picnic area that is inhabited by bears, and people have to use bear-safe decision-making. I applied to work at Lawrence Rockefeller Nature Preserve. It's at the south end of Grand Teton National Park, and it's a 1,400-acre nature preserve. Kind of goes with my philosophy of nature and nature preservation, so it was a good fit. It's on the banks of Phelps Lake. It's a glacial lake surrounded by the Tetons. And when I talked to my supervisor, she said, we have housing we can rent you. It's at the base of the cathedral group. My husband and my housing is 305 square feet. It has everything we need. It's our little cabin at the base of the cathedral group. Lucky we don't spend much time inside. We live at the base of the cathedral group. It's in a little complex with several other cabins. It used to be an old, like Route 66 motor lodge. So many other of our companions and coworkers are based out of our little campground. We socialize. We enjoy the wildlife that's in our backyard. We hike together. We enjoy meals together. We now have a little, just like a little texting group where if we see a moose out our back window or a rainbow out our front window, we text each other and we'll all run outside and see the wildlife or see the rainbow. We carpool together. So if we go to the same workstation, then we all carpool together to our workstation. And a lot of times, if it's a beautiful morning in Grand Teton, all the other people in the car say, "Oh, look at the Tetons." Or if we see pronghorns out the window, every ranger in the car yells, "Prongy!" So we all enjoy all the same things, so it's a blessing to live right at the base of the cathedral group. Working at the Lawrence Rockefeller Preserve is a real gift as well, and it was donated by the Rockefeller family. If you don't know the Rockefeller story of Grand Teton, John D. Rockefeller Jr. was the oil man who came into the Teton Valley. It was becoming overwrought with bars, billboards, and brothels, and it was unseemly. And so he began buying up the property so that it wouldn't be overrun with unseemly establishments. He was buying the land under the name of the Snake River Land Company so that he didn't have to pay Rockefeller prices. And he bought 33,000 acres and gave it to the government ultimately to become an addition to Grand Teton National Park. He did keep the 1,400 acres that was Lawrence Rockefeller Nature Preserve for his family ranch for 70 years. And he asked his son, Lawrence Rockefeller, to turn it over to the government to be whatever he wanted it to be. It was his decision. And Lawrence Rockefeller did turn the land over in 2001 to become a nature preserve, but Lawrence Rockefeller died before it could become the nature preserve. He would have never wanted it to be called the Lawrence Rockefeller Nature Preserve. He was a very quiet man, but his family called it the Lawrence Rockefeller Nature Preserve in his honor. The Rockefeller Nature Preserve has trails, it has mountains, it has the big lake, it has the beautiful nature preserve, and every building was removed and given to the national park or moved to the family's new ranch. So everything was recycled and reclaimed, and it's a place for quiet, respite, and to get in touch with nature. So well done, Rockefellers. You'll find that it's a very different experience when you go to the Lawrence Rockefeller Preserve. The Rockefellers allowed for 50 parking spaces on this 1,400 nature preserve. You meet a park ranger in the parking lot. They give you the lowdown, and they tell you how long you have to wait for a parking spot. At that point, you can leave, or you can wait for a parking spot. If you get there early, you usually get a parking spot, and if you get there later in the day, you usually get a parking spot, but you may have a wait because 50 spots it is, and 50 spots only. While you're waiting, we may teach you about bears. We may talk to you about other opportunities, and we may talk to you about what you can do while you're on the property. But you will meet a ranger, and we'll try and make your wait as comfortable as it possibly can be. There is the Nature Center, which is a piece of beauty in and of itself. It's a LEED Platinum certified building, all made from reclaimed wood. It's insulated with denim, reclaimed stone. It's low-key. It has a resource room. It has low-key exhibits. Not a lot of running kids and screaming people. When you walk into the building, it's reverent, quiet, low-key, whispering. It has a sound room that has a year's worth of sounds, animal sounds, nature sounds, rippling water. So it entices people to slow down and quiet down when they step into the visitor center. You will meet a ranger in the nature center as well when you step in. There's a good chance for meeting wildlife when you're on the trails at the Rockefeller Preserve. Because there's less parking, there's less people on the trails, and so less people, there's more opportunity for wildlife viewing, and that's what Lawrence Rockefeller wanted. So you may find that there's other people on the trails, and you may find that there's other visitors on the trail as well. Quite often, people encounter bears, and so we typically give people a primer on, if you meet a black bear, here's what you need to do. And sometimes, big wildlife visit right in the parking lot. But there's always natural beauty in the preserve, whether you see wildlife or not. And you'll probably meet a ranger when you're on the trail. Rangers are encouraged to rove, to be on the trails to answer questions, and we do impromptu programs. So we may take some photos out on the trail to show what the ranch used to look like. We may take hands-on things for the kids. Sometimes we set up junior ranger activities, but most times during the day, there are rangers on the trail out there to talk to people, answer their questions, interact with people. That's the most fun part of the job. Well, except for junior ranger swearing in, that's pretty good too. And we have the best junior ranger swearing in activities, so we think we're pretty special. We're encouraged also in the schedule to rove to other places in the park. So we go to other visitor centers and learn about their operation, and we go to other districts on trails, trailheads, and we walk in other districts. So we're located in the very far south of the park, and we are scheduled to go to other districts so that we can answer questions when visitors ask us questions, because we answer a lot of questions. So we may go to Jenny Lake, Coulter Bay, Flag Ranch, so that we can walk their trails, so that when someone says, your trail was great, it's very flat, do you know of other trails like that? Then we can say, yeah, we know where you can go. We have a ranger secret for you. We'll suggest you go here. So we're encouraged in the schedule to do that so that we can answer questions. And a lot of us do it on our own time anyway. We're also encouraged to go and visit Yellowstone. Our permit to enter Grand Teton National Park gets us into Yellowstone National Park. So we can go into Yellowstone on our days off and go anywhere we want to in Yellowstone. That's a treat. So many of us take advantage of that. But also, we need to know about Yellowstone. We're a park ranger. We're expected to know about everything. So knowing about the answers to questions about Yellowstone is very helpful in our day-to-day job. We're also encouraged to visit all the other natural lands in the area. And what's awesome about the greater Yellowstone ecosystem is it's not just Grand Teton, it's not just Yellowstone. They're surrounded by 5 national forests, the Elk Refuge, and the Wind River Range. So 330 million acres of public lands right there in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So awesome habitat for all the wildlife in that area. There's no boundaries that animals are aware of, so they have great habitat. And when you live and work in Grand Teton National Park, and it's beside Yellowstone, under Yellowstone National Park, and beside all these wonderful public lands, you're going to get visitors. People are going to come and visit you. Then you have to become trail guide, photography guide, wildlife guide. So it's not lonely. You have people to come and see you. And then you have all the beauty of the cathedral group. And I should have known when I heard the emotion in my supervisor's voice that there was something special about having a 305 square foot cabin with a full bath, I have to add, which was awesome. That there was going to be something special about being at the base of the cathedral group. I'm a wildflower nut. There's 3 seasons of blooms during one season at Grand Teton National Park. You take a half-an-hour drive and your camera, and you get to see some awesome wildlife. And you literally see 3 seasons when you go to Grand Teton as a seasonal ranger. So I worked hard to make my dream come true. I wouldn't change any of it, and I feel really blessed to have gone to my national park adventure. And if it's your desire, just go on to usajobs.gov. Maybe not right now, because there's a hiring freeze, but watch the news, keep after it, and you can have it send you emails when jobs come available. And they also, at Grand Teton and several other national parks, have really, really great internships. I would say that Smokies and Blue Ridge Parkway are non-fee parks. That may be changing at Great Smokies because they're the parking fee, but they don't have a lot of money in their budgets, whereas Grand Teton is a fee park. Any park that charges an entrance fee has fee money, so they have more money for hiring. And Grand Teton has a very generous town of Jackson, Wyoming, and their very generous donors give to the Grand Teton Foundation, and so Grand Teton Foundation funds positions as well through the Grand Teton Foundation. So there is more positions available at Grand Teton. I just want to thank you for having me here today and hope that you get to follow your dreams as well.
Let's give Laura a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. What a great life. Oh my gosh. Such cool stuff that you've gotten to do, continue to get to do.
I feel really lucky. Yeah.
That's, I mean, just to be able to hang out in those scenes, those vistas, around the flowers, around those animals, that's pretty special stuff. If you're here in the globe with me and you've got questions for Laura about her presentation, just wave at me. I'll bring you a microphone if you're down here on the first floor. If you're up on the balconies, wave down and then yell, and we'll repeat your questions into the microphones if we need to. And if you're watching online, you can post your questions in the chat. We've got that pulled up so that we can see your thoughts, experiences, and comments and get those shared in to the program as well. But Laura, I'm curious. You talked about spending time with family out in wild places, traveling. Do you have, and you mentioned remembering the songs and stories from a ranger at Grand Teton. Do you have other exciting ranger experiences or interpretive programs that you feel like influenced your direction into environmental education and into interpretation?
I will say that when I went to NC State, I thought I wanted to be in the School of Forestry, and I was wandering the halls of the forestry building, and I was lost, and I asked a gentleman, can you tell me how to get to such and such a place for forestry? And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a park ranger. And he said, what do you want to do as a park ranger? And I said, oh, I want to give campfire programs and teach people about nature. And he said, oh, you want to be in Parks and Recreation. And he was the dean of the Parks and Recreation School, and he walked me up to the Parks and Recreation School. My husband spent 2 semesters in forestry measuring trees and their base and how they would become timber, and that is not what I wanted to do. So I'm so glad, I'm so thankful for the gentleman who pointed me in the right direction.
Oh, wow. What a serendipitous occasion. What luck.
Yes, absolutely.
To run into. Also, that's been my experience with college deans. They always just tell everybody to come be in their program, regardless. You could have run into like a medical school dean. They would have been like, no, I think you should come be in pre-med. That's fascinating. So, are you headed back to Grand Teton soon, or are you going to try another national park? Are you like, let's fill the map full of seasonal ranger opportunities?
I think my heart is in Grand Teton, and we've talked to Grand Teton, and right now there's the hiring freeze, so they aren't able to make any offers. But if that opportunity comes up, I think we'll go back to Grand Teton.
What do you think about the ways that people visit national parks and what your interactions are like with them? Because I have the sense that encountering someone who's driving the Blue Ridge Parkway is different than someone who's spending a long weekend in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and they wander up to the Smokies to see what the creeks are about, versus somebody who's standing at the base of the Tetons and is just like gobsmacked by the scene in front of them. It might not be different. Maybe it's just different levels of the same sorts of things you encounter, but I'm curious if there's different experiences that people have.
Gobsmacked is a great way to describe it. You're right. People come for different reasons, and there's a variety of different visitors in every park. However, I feel like in the campground, the people who visit the campgrounds in the Smokies are, I could have given awards away for the number of people who came up, put their registration down on the desk and said, I've been coming here 50 years. They loved their campground and their experiences in the campground. So it was a badge of honor how many years they came back, and it was theirs, and that was their badge of honor. And you love to see that because they loved the campground. And a lot of them were locals, and that they would come over on weekends. So they had that pride and ownership. And the Blue Ridge Parkway, it was people, and they would come up and they'd say, where can I go in a half an hour? And you would say, a half an hour? It's 469 miles long. Or they were disappointed when they heard how long it was going to take them to get to Linville Falls. And it's meant to be a drive. It's meant to be a winding road, and you're meant to enjoy the drive. You can't get there in an hour. So then they're disappointed. So people, here's what I would say. Before you go to any national park, do your homework. Go to the website. Read the suggestions. But you're right, in Grand Teton, they are gobsmacked, and most of the people are so grateful to be there, and they are overwhelmed, and they're happy to meet a ranger. And I'm so glad I chose the location that I chose, because they thank us, they want to know about us, and they want to talk about Grand Teton and their experience. Now, there are other people that come, and it's like they have a catalog in their mind, and they're like, we got the bison, we got the wolf, we got the elk, now we only need a black bear and a grizzly bear. And so there is a competition. You hear them at the overlooks. They're like, did you get a bison yet? Did you get an elk yet? So there is that, the competition. But most of the time, folks are really, they're into it for what it is. Here's
cool.
a question.
Are you willing to share a story of like you giving a child one of the moments that you had at that campfire in Grand Teton? Like, have you been able to give moments like that to others? Are you willing to share one of those?
I think it's more like the child gives it to me, and then I can expand upon it. I had a child last year at Grand Teton who was homeschooled, and She was so smart, like smart beyond her years. And we were just chatting at the front desk, and she wanted to tell me all the things she knew about. And so I would ask her, like, what's your favorite animal? And she would say pronghorn. I'd say, that's my favorite animal. And then she wanted to show me pictures that she had taken on her digital camera, which is so great now because you can flip through the digital camera and look at the images, and her photos were so beautiful. And after we started talking, I thought, oh, she's really smart. So I just encouraged her a little bit, and then she said, you know, I'd like to be a park biologist. And I thought, honey, follow your dream. And all you need to do is get good in sciences, and just encourage her a little bit. And then she said, I've got my Junior Ranger book. Could you stamp it for me? I'm like, of course. And then we had our Junior Ranger swearing in ceremony. We go outside. We let them wear a Junior Ranger hat. It's a real Ranger hat, but it's sized for them. And then we do the pledge in front of the National Park Service. We have a big shield. And then we call everybody that's around to come and applaud. It's a big deal. It's a big show. And then I told her parents, and I encouraged them to continue to encourage her. And then she said, thank you so much for making this so special for me. And I thought, I love to meet people like you, and I want to encourage you. So I think they do it more for me, and then I can just expand on what they're interested in and encourage them as well. But we don't get that many kids. They don't want to wait. People don't want to wait with the kids in the car because it's a long wait. But the ones that do, that we try to make it special for them. Thanks for asking.
Okay, so we've got some online questions. Lisa asked, how far in advance do you usually have to apply if you want to work seasonally in the National Park System?
That's a great question. In typical years, the job announcements will come open in October of the prior year for the next summer. And you'll have to watch because different parks do it at different times. So the Intermountain region, which is like Rocky, Glacier, Grand Teton, and some of the other western parks will come in October. And then some of the parks here in the east, they'll wait till November. So Smokies, Blue Ridge Parkway, and then some of the Florida parks will wait until November. So it starts to trickle. So you want to start watching early October. But you can set up an account on USA Jobs, and then you can have it alert. You can set up alerts for the parks that you're interested in. And usajobs.org is the only way to do it. There's no other way to get a bona fide National Park Service job. Another way to think about it is to get a job in the park that's not a Park Service job. So you can get a Grand Teton Foundation Park. Many parks have associated foundations, or you can work in the lodges. You can work with Aramark, or you can work with the Grand Teton Lodge Foundation, or any of the associated lodges or gift shops in the parks. If you want to be a ranger, you need to go through the USA Jobs.
And she had a quick follow-up. What formal education is usually needed to apply for the seasonal jobs?
That's another good question. And whenever like an older person comes to me and they say, I'd like to be a park ranger, but I didn't get the right education. There's no right education. I think people think you have to have a degree in natural resources, or you have to have a degree in plant biology. There are specialized jobs. There's specialized jobs for the wildlife people, and there's specialized jobs for the plant people. But an interpretive ranger, you can have a communication degree. You can have a sociology degree. I worked with someone who had a degree in, it was more theater arts, and because he was good with people and outgoing, he was great as an interpretive ranger. You have to like people and be passionate about the park and giving out information. You have to be a good researcher, that you can research information and be able to provide it back in an informed way to the public. So being good with people, being good with public speaking, that's important.
Okay, Linda wonders if you could elaborate on your experiences in Australia.
Oh, is that my sister?
Think it may be.
After college with my college sweetheart, we did an internship in Australia. My husband set it up, and we worked in a forest park in Australia where we essentially were rangers working in all aspects of that park. It was set up with the Minister of Lands, and we worked in a park and did landscaping, interpretation, education, and public outreach, and it was a great opportunity right out of college. It was about 6 months, and we lived with an Australian family who were our mom and dad while we were there, so great opportunity to go international and learn about Australian behind-the-scenes parks and recreation, so great step right there for us as well. Thanks for asking, Linda.
Okay, there is one more. Sherry had asked, where did you mentioned where you lived in the Tetons, but where did you live while you were working in the Smokies and in the Blue Ridge?
So the Smokies and the Blue Ridge have really limited housing for park staff and not terribly in good condition because they don't have funding. So they don't usually offer housing for their park staff. So I want to say I lived in the Deep Creek area, which is Bryson City, when I worked for Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Nice, really nice community, so rented a little cabin there. And then when I worked on the Blue Ridge Parkway, I lived in the Asheville area, rented an apartment there, really nice folks there as well. So part of the salary went to rental in Asheville. And my husband worked for the Biltmore Estate, so he had income coming in, so he loved working for the Biltmore Estate.
I was going to say, it almost reminded me of when I was a seasonal state park ranger in Tennessee, and my housing was my tent in the campground for 12 weeks. That was a lot of fun, too.
That's living hard. And the Grand Teton provides camper pads for the volunteers and some of the seasonals as well. And you pay for the camper pad to bring your RV, but they do provide them for seasonals and volunteers.
Well, Laura, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
This has been fantastic. Everybody, thanks for coming out. Thanks for tuning in to today's program for the Lunchtime Discovery Series. I'm pretty sure we'll be back here next Wednesday with another program at noon. So make sure that you're following the North Carolina Office of Environmental Education on social media, on Facebook, as well as Instagram. You can find them, I believe they're North Carolina EE on both platforms. Also head to their website, eenorthcarolina.org. You can see a full calendar of programs and events like this one, so you can see what's coming up next. And you can mark your calendars, bookmark the links, tune in online, or join us here downtown Raleigh at the Museum of Natural Sciences. Thanks, everybody, and I don't know, get out there and get adventuring. Bye, everybody.